thing is, you're not gonna help at all, are you? Because why the fuck would you help when there's two fucking levers? I get to do fucking both of them! This was a fucking mess. Like this, we're the chase sequence game. We're the game of chase sequences. We are the chase sequence game. Yada yada, blobbity bloobity. This guy is done.
Open. There was a moment, I'd say around 2021, maybe 2022, where Mascot horror felt like the future. Creepy toys, abandoned factories, colorful characters with too many teeth. The formula was working. Poppy Playtime Chapter 1 was short, sharp, and genuinely unsettling. Huggy Wuggy became an icon overnight. The grab pack was a cool mechanic. It felt like we were watching the birth of a new horror franchise that could stand next to Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, 5 chapters and several years later, the biggest criticism of the franchise is that it feels like homework. Markiplier played Chapter 5, called it a mess, and said he's not coming back for Chapter 6. When Markiplier quits your horror game, something has gone profoundly wrong. But this isn't just a Poppy Playtime problem. Ironic, I know, this is a genre problem. Mascot horror, the entire subgenre, is collapsing under the weight of its own success. And the reason is simple. At some point, the mascots stopped being scary and started being products. How Poppy Playtime lost the plot. Hello everybody, my name is Angel or Enlightened, and welcome to another video. Let me take you through what playing Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 actually feels like, because I think the experience of it tells the story better than any criticism could. You start in a new area of the factory, there's some light exposition, then you're given a puzzle, you solve it, you walk to the next room, there's another puzzle, you solve it, you walk further, another puzzle. In a chase sequence, a monster runs at you, you run away, you probably die a few times because there's a new mechanic you haven't been taught yet. Then you respawn, walk forward, puzzle, walk, puzzle, chase, die, respawn, puzzle for 4 hours. That's the core gameplay loop of Chapter 5, and it's been the core gameplay loop since roughly Chapter 3. Walk, puzzle, chase, die, repeat. And I want to be fair, puzzles are fine in horror games. The original Resident Evil games were full of puzzles. Silent Hill was full of puzzles, but those puzzles existed in service of atmosphere. They gave you a reason to slow down and exist in the space, which made the scares hit harder when they arrived. Poppy Playtime's puzzles don't do that. They exist to extend runtime. That's it, they're padding. By Chapter 5, the game has gotten so desperate to justify its length that you spend huge stretches of time dragging objects around, flipping switches and solving pressure plate mechanics that would feel tedious in a Portal game, let alone a horror one. And the chase sequences, which were once the franchise's biggest strength, have been run into the ground, pun intended. Chapter 1 had one major chase and it was electric. Huggy Wuggy, the conveyor belt, pure adrenaline. At Chapter 5, there are so many chase sequences that fans have lost count. And worse, the game keeps introducing new mechanics during chases, the absolute worst time to learn something new. You don't die because you're scared, you die because the game didn't explain the controls. That's not horror, that's frustration design. Markiplier said it best in his stream, I do not like my gameplay to be trial and error. Every time it does it, the stakes are lower. That's really the issue. Because it's doing it again and again. When your chase sequences are so repetitive that a player stops feeling fear and starts feeling annoyance, you haven't really made a horror game. You've made an obstacle course with a spooky skin. When chapters become seasons, is the thing that really bothers me about Poppy Playtime, and I think this is the core of the whole problem. This story should be over by now. By the end of Chapter 2, we knew the setup. There's a toy factory. Kids were kidnapped and experimented on. They were turned into toys. There's a big bad called the Prototype. The player's trying to survive and uncover the truth. That's a solid horror premise. Clean, compelling, creepy. You could tell that story in 3, maybe 4 chapters. Chapter 3 was already pushing it, but it had enough new content and world-building catnap, the Playcare section, to justify its existence. Chapter 4 started to feel like it was running out of steam, and Chapter 5 is filler. Multiple reviewers, not haters, actual fans of the franchise, have called it a filler chapter. The story doesn't meaningfully advance. The prototype, which has been teased and built up for years, is finally revealed, and then the chapter just ends. Another cliffhanger leading into Chapter 6. It has Harry Potter splitting the last book into 2 movies energy. Except Harry Potter was one split. Poppy Playtime is doing this every chapter. Each one ends on a cliffhanger that could have been resolved in the same installment. Each one introduces new characters who show up, do one thing, and die. Each one promises that the next chapter will be the payoff, and every time people pay $20 for it. Because that's what this is really about. Each chapter is priced separately. Chapter 1 was $5, Chapter 2 was $10, Chapters 3 through 5 are $20 each. If you've bought every chapter at launch, you've spent $75 on a game that still doesn't have an ending, and Mob Entertainment has given no indication of how many chapters are left. Fans are now speculating about Chapter 6, Chapter 7, some people think it could go even further. What point is this a game, and at what point is this a subscription? Compare this to how FNAF handled its original run. Scott Cawthon released 4 mainline FNAF games in roughly a year. They were short, tight, and each one told a complete chunk of the story while leaving enough mystery for the next. You could play all 4 for the price of 1 Poppy Playtime chapter, and when Scott felt the story was done, he ended it. Mob Entertainment doesn't seem to want to end it, and why would they? Every chapter is guaranteed to trend on YouTube. Every new character is a guaranteed plush. The game isn't designed to conclude, it's designed to continue, and the gameplay is severely suffering for it. The merchandise machine. Speaking of plushies, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or more accurately, the Huggy Wuggy plushie sitting on every shelf in every Target in America. Mascot Horror has always had a merch problem. FNAF had merch, obviously, but FNAF earned its merch. The characters became iconic because the games were good. The merch came after the cultural moment. Poppy Playtime did it backwards. Only one 45-minute chapter released, Mob Entertainment was already pushing plushies, NFTs, movie deals, and merchandise lines. The game hadn't proven itself yet. It hadn't built a fanbase through quality. It built a fanbase through marketability and then sold products to that fanbase before the product they actually came for was even finished. The NFT debacle in late 2021 was the first red flag. Mob released NFTs with game lore attached to them. If you wanted to understand the story, you had to buy digital receipts. When the backlash hit, they backed off the NFTs, but they never backed off the mentality. Every design decision in Poppy Playtime, from the character designs to the chapter structure, feels reverse engineered from a merch catalog. Why does every chapter introduce 3 to 5 new characters? Because each one is a new product line. Why are the characters colorful and aesthetic despite being in a horror game? Because horror doesn't sell Happy Meals, cute monsters do. Why does the prototype, the scariest and most anticipated character, keep getting teased and delayed? Because the moment the prototype is resolved, the franchise loses its biggest marketing hook. Even the fan community has noticed this. One commenter nailed it: Mob is too focused on making characters marketable. Prototype, Tumblr, Sexum, and Chum, cute, huggable. None of those designs were scary. And that's the death spiral of Mascot Horror. The moment you start designing characters for the merch wall instead of the game, the horror evaporates. You can't be scared of something that's also available as a $25 Squishmallow. The two vibes are fundamentally incompatible. It's not just Poppy, the genre-wide problem. This is where we zoom out, because Poppy Playtime is not alone. It's just the biggest example of a disease that's infected the entire Mascot Horror genre. Garten of Banban is the most obvious case. 7+ chapters of a game that was never good to begin with, each one introducing new characters who exist purely to be thumbnails on YouTube. The gameplay is barely functional. The voice acting oscillates between so bad it's funny and just so bad. The lore makes no sense. And yet it keeps getting made, because every chapter trends, every character gets fan content, and every release drives a new wave of "I played the worst horror game" reaction videos. Garten of Banban isn't a horror franchise, it's a content farm wearing a costume. Dark Deception is a sadder story, a game that started with genuine promise, solid maze chase gameplay, and a unique aesthetic. Then it got bogged down in development hell, expanded scope, and the same, just one more chapter syndrome that's eating Poppy Playtime alive. Bendy and the Ink Machine deserves a mention here because it's arguably the original Mascot Horror to merch pipeline game. The developers literally added a toy manufacturing area to the game's lore, and then used that as the justification to sell those same toys in real life. It's a level of synergy that would make a Disney executive weep. Pattern is always the same. 1. Release a short, effective first chapter that hooks people. 2. Design characters that are marketable first, scary second. 3. Stretch the story across as many paid installments as possible. 4. Introduce new characters constantly to feed the merch machine. 5. Never end the story, because ending the story ends the revenue. This is the Mascot Horror playbook, and it has nothing to do with horror. It has everything to do with extracting maximum value from a franchise before the internet moves on. What Mascot Horror forgot. You want to know what makes this so frustrating? Mascot Horror is great, the concept is actually effective. The reason FNAF became a phenomenon wasn't because Freddy Fazbear looked cool on a t-shirt, it's because there was something terrifying about animatronics that shouldn't be moving suddenly moving. The uncanny valley of a friendly face becoming hostile, that's primal horror, that's real, and Poppy Playtime Chapter 1 understood that. The moment where you see Huggy Wuggy standing in the lobby perfectly still, and you know he's going to move eventually. That's good horror, that's patient, atmospheric, earned fear. But you can't mass produce that feeling, you can't scale it, you can't release it in $20 installments every 18 months and expect it to still hit the same way. Horror requires surprise, horror requires restraint. Horror requires the willingness to not show the monster, to not explain the lore, to not give the audience everything they want. Mascot Horror has done the opposite. It's shown us every monster, explained every backstory, given us every character's tragic origin in exhausting detail across notes, tapes, and ARGs. And in doing so, it's done the one thing a horror franchise can never do: it's made the scary things familiar. Huggy Wuggy isn't scary anymore, he's on lunchboxes. Catnap isn't scary anymore, he's a plushie. The prototype isn't scary anymore, and it hasn't even properly appeared yet. The mystique is gone, the only thing left is momentum. And momentum, as Chapter 5 just proved, runs out. The way forward, if there is one. Is Mascot horror dead? No, not yet, but it's sick like cancer sick, and the cure is obvious even if nobody in the genre seems willing to take the medicine. End your stories, not in 7 chapters, not in 10. Tell a tight, complete narrative with a beginning, middle, and end. Poppy Playtime should have been 3 chapters, maybe 4. The willingness to end a story while people still want more is the difference between a classic and a cash grab. Stop designing for the merch war. Make your characters scary first. If they happen to also be marketable, great. But the second, will this sell as a plush? Becomes the first question in a character design meeting you've already lost. Respect the player's time. If your chapter is 4 hours of puzzles and chase sequences to deliver 30 minutes of actual story, you don't have a chapter. You have filler wrapped in a price tag. And most importantly, remember that horror is about less, not more. Less exposition, less character. Less lore, less chapters. The scariest thing in a horror game is the thing you don't fully understand, that you only glimpse, that you can't quite explain. The moment you explain everything, you've explained away the fear. FNAF at its best understood this. The original 4 games gave you fragments, camera feeds, newspaper clippings, phone calls, and let your imagination fill in the gaps. It was terrifying because you didn't know the full story. Poppy Playtime, by contrast, has given us the full story in agonizing detail across hundreds of collectible notes, ARG puzzles, and lore dumps, and somehow the story is less interesting for it. The irony is almost poetic. A genre built on the fear of the unknown has been killed by the compulsion to over-explain. And the only thing scarier than a mascot in the dark is a mascot on a clearance rack, 5 chapters deep in a story that forgot why it was being told. Outro. Be honest with you, I don't enjoy making this video. I wanted Poppy Playtime to be great. I wanted the mascot horror genre to evolve and mature and produce something genuinely special. And there are moments scattered across 5 chapters and half a dozen clones where you can see what it could have been. But wanting something to be great doesn't make it great, and at some point, criticism isn't negativity, it's just honesty. If Mob Entertainment somehow sees this, end the story. Make Chapter 6 the last one. Give us a real ending. Stop introducing characters, stop stretching, stop squeezing, just land the plane. And if you're a developer working on a mascot horror game right now, wondering whether to split your story into 6 chapters or 3, pick 3. Hell, pick 2, make it tight, make it terrifying. And when it's done, let it be done. The best horror games know when to stop. The worst ones never do. Thanks for watching. You've been enlightened.